SABC International News editor Sophie Mokoena joins us in studio for more. Good afternoon, Sophie. Let's start off with how important is that ruling that we're expecting this afternoon?
The ruling is quite important because you know that when South Africa went to the International Court of Justice in January, they wanted the court to impose preliminary measures to ensure that Israel doesn't continue with bombardment in Gaza so that you can save lives. But unfortunately, the court didn't issue instruction to Israel to halt the military operations because Israel was arguing that it is defending itself. But there were measures that were imposed on Israel. One, to ensure that the people of Gaza are able to access aid. And secondly, to ensure that the ordinary civilians are protected. But unfortunately, when you look at what transpired, that didn't really happen. Yes, there were some delivery of aid, but it was not enough in terms of protecting civilians. They continued to die, particularly women and children. And then South Africa went back to the court, requesting the court to put in place extra measures, but not much happened in terms of halting the military operation. And we later saw the bombardment in Rafah that was very, very brutal, and it is continuing. People are continuing to die. And South Africa feels strong that the Israel state, particularly the IDF, or the Israel Defense Force, has violated the measures that were put in place to protect the civilians and also to ensure that Palestinians have access to aid. Now, you'd recall, maybe in January, let's listen at what the former UK MP or leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, had to say after the first presentation in January, which were violated. Let's take a listen.
I thought it was a superb presentation, brilliantly put forward, very closely argued and analysed, and it wasn't sensationalised. You didn't show, as you could have done, lots of pictures of the most horrendous human suffering in Gaza. You made the point that the people of Palestine look to international justice to protect them from the horror that they're going through. And I think the whole world owes a debt of thanks to South Africa for having the courage to bring the case here to the International Court of Justice. And I've been very impressed with the presentation that's been made today.
Now South Africa is back again, and this time around, last week, the presentation revolved around the defiance of Israel and also violation of even those measures that were put in place by the International Court of Justice. They went further to request the International Court of Justice this time around to be clear in terms of asking Israel to stop its military operations in Gaza, because this area, particularly Rafah, you have refugees. It's not even formal structures, and therefore you are killing ordinary people who have already fled the areas where the Israel Defense Force instructed the people of Palestine to move from, and therefore where to from now. That even offended the Egyptians, because then the border between Rafah and Palestine, it was occupied by Israeli force. We saw Egypt making an announcement that they will join South Africa in relation to this case. That has caused a lot of tension between Israel and Egypt. And therefore, now the measures that South Africa is requesting, one, the order requesting the modification and the indication of provisional measures so that you are clear. Secondly, that Israel has violated the order and the attacks in Rafah amounts to that. And then they also want humanitarian access, particularly for people who are suffering in Gaza and in Rafah. And also what is important, the independent investigation led by the UN with independent investigators to be allowed to go to Palestine, to Gaza, to Rafah, to investigate the impact of this military operation. And secondly, the journalists, the media, must be allowed to enter Gaza and also Rafah. You know that Israel, because they are controlling the entry points to Gaza and particularly to Rafah, they are refusing independent foreign media to get into Gaza. Media around the world, different organizations have made a plea that they be allowed to go there, but it looks like the Israeli Defense Force is adamant that it will not do that. And that's another issue that is critical for media to be able to tell a proper, balanced story.
Sophie, based on this picture that you've just painted for us, how enforceable then is any ruling or measures taken or even announced by the ICJ then?
The problem is Israel is adamant it has defied the rulings. Not even today. There have been many occasions where the court has made some pronouncement in relation to Israel and Palestine living side by side, and the recognition of the Palestinian state. But unfortunately, Israel hasn't been able, or it's not willing to accede to the request and the ruling of the ICJ previous ones, not now after this current conflict. So you expect Israel to continue to be defiant. This morning I saw Benjamin Netanyahu is already predicting what's going to happen, and he's very defiant. You would recall that even in relation to the International Court of Criminal Court, when it issued a request to the chamber to give approval for warrants of arrest to the 3 Hamas leaders and also to the 2 leaders of Israel, Israel was very defiant. And I expect Israel to continue to be defiant, protected by its allies like the United Kingdom and the United States of America in particular.
Sophie, thank you so much for that perspective. That is international news editor Sophie Mokoena.